Okay, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, probably for the first time in your lives, has been in the news a lot lately, and I want to break it down a little bit. So every month, there is a report that is published by the Bureau of Labor Statistics that sits under the Department of Labor. I used to be the chief of staff of the Department of Labor, so I work closely with the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That report puts out how many jobs were added or subtracted to the economy every month. How is that put together? It's put together through a survey, much like a poll, that I will get to. In the first Friday of the new month, those numbers are released at 8:30 a.m. President Trump tweeted the following on August 1st. I should say more specifically, truth. I was just informed that our country's jobs numbers are being produced by a Biden appointee, Dr. Erica McIntyre, the Commissioner of Labor Statistics, who faked the jobs numbers before the election to try to boost Kamala's chances of victory. This is the same Bureau of Labor Statistics that overstated the jobs growth in March 2024 by approximately 818,000. And then again, right before the 2024 presidential election in August and September, by 112,000. These were records. No one can be that wrong. We need accurate jobs numbers. I have directed my team to fire this Biden political appointee immediately. She will be replaced with someone much more competent and qualified. Important numbers like this must be fair and accurate. They can't be manipulated for political purposes. McIntyre said there were only 73,000 jobs added, a shock, but more importantly that a major mistake was made by them, 258,000 jobs downward in the prior 2 months. Similar things happen in the first part of the year, always to the negative. The economy is booming under Trump, despite a Fed that always plays games, this time with interest rates, where they lowered them twice and substantially just before the presidential election, I assume with the hopes of getting Kamala elected. How did that work out? Jerome, too late, Powell should also be put out to pasture. Thank you for your attention on this matter. The second later, he tweeted, in my opinion, today's jobs numbers were rigged in order to make the Republicans and me look bad. Just like when they had 3 great days around the 2024 presidential election, and then those numbers were taken away on November 15, 2024, right after the election when the jobs numbers were massively revised downward, making a correction of over 818,000 jobs, a total scam. Jerome, too late, Powell is no better. But the good news is our country is doing great. Okay, a lot to unpack there. Pretty much the only thing I agree with Trump is that these numbers should not be manipulated for political purposes. So let me tell you how it works. There are 2 different surveys, okay? The establishment survey and the household survey. The establishment survey surveys businesses and other organizations. The household survey surveys households. These are hundreds of thousands of data points, okay? They go into, much like a poll, they put it out for questionnaires for people to answer. Every month, those questionnaires come back, and then those questionnaires are used to calculate and extrapolate based on that sample what the number is, okay? So think of it much like a poll. You get the numbers back and you extrapolate based on that survey data. Now, the other thing that's interesting about this is that those surveys, because you're surveying literally hundreds of thousands of households and businesses, are incomplete because not all of it comes back in time, right? So the number that you are seeing every month is an estimate based on the survey responses. Again, this is not some kind of a manipulation by Erica McIntyre. This is just how the statistical science works, right? So those numbers come back. Here's the timeline on how that works. The numbers come back. You have over 2,000 people at the Bureau of Labor Statistics that are called nonpartisan career employees, okay? They regardless of who is in power, in terms of Democrats or Republican, stay there as career officials. There are 40 or 50 or so who focus solely on this jobs report. 2 days before the release, as I mentioned, it comes out the first of every month. That data is presented by those career employees to the Commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That is the first time the Commissioner sees that data, okay? So the notion that somehow they could manipulate it, something was wrong, just doesn't hold water that it would be the Commissioner's fault because, in this case, she does not see that data until 2 days before. Then the next day, that information is presented to the President and his senior team. Then at 8 a.m. on Friday morning, the Secretary of Labor and his senior team, I was one of those people, are briefed on what the numbers are telling us. Then at 8:30, it's released to the public. Typically what happens with the White House and the administration is there's a Zoom after that to talk about communications around it. That was as political as we got. How should we talk about this to the public? How should we communicate it? What Trump is alleging is that somehow the numbers were fudged to benefit Kamala Harris and to hurt President Trump. Again, that just doesn't stand any water. I should also note this notion that there's a Biden appointee that he was just informed about. The reality is the commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics is appointed every 4 years by law. So it traverses presidential administrations often. So we had a commissioner. His name was William Beach. He was incredibly competent. He actually came from the Heritage Foundation. He was an economist, and he and the political appointees within the Labor Department got along very well because we trusted his data. Now, as I mentioned, survey data comes back. Sometimes that survey data is incomplete. Actually, all the time it is because not all the surveys come back. So after a month or two, as well as annually, you revise the jobs numbers based on more information. Again, this is scientific, right? It's not about manipulation. It's more data comes back, so we're going to make that number for that month more precise. So in the case of month to month, it's because survey data comes back from more businesses or households. In the case of a year, there are things like unemployment insurance goes back. The data that the states process for unemployment insurance comes back, which gives an more accurate reading of businesses, which allows you to then extrapolate the data more precisely. So here's the reality. The reality is these numbers are very, very hard to calculate, especially in uneven times. In COVID, you saw revisions in the hundreds of thousands, if not more. After the Great Recession, 2008, you saw that. This is just the reality of how it works. President Trump would make it lead you to believe there's some kind of political conspiracy. There is nothing of that sort here. I would also mention that this downward revision that everyone's panicking about, it's important to point out that this may be a tumultuous economic time that the data hasn't fully presented, right? We're seeing signs of that, and I'll get to that later in the episode. So this may be a sign that we are in, a warning sign, candidly, that we are in more tumultuous times, and that is more to come. So that's a little bit about how that works and how Trump is doing it. So what is next? Okay? What is next is Trump's playbook on how he proceeds. Because bottom line is, so basically what happened was these numbers on August 1st were lower than what he expected. And because it's a proxy for the economy, it looks bad for Trump that it was lower than what he expected. So what he is going to try to do now is to install a loyalist, not just a loyalist, but also someone who believes in new methodology or questions the methodology to be able to goose these numbers. So there's 5 steps that he's going to do, and I want to take you through them right now. First is to trash the BLS methodology. Second is to nominate someone who says it needs updating. Third is to funnel cash to outside help that could enrich his allies. Fourth is the numbers going up. And then 5 is to compare apples to oranges and brag about record growth. So first, methodology. So as I mentioned, the BLS has a scientific methodology that they use to calculate the jobs numbers every month. But a new commissioner could decide that the methodology is outdated or wants to update it. There's nothing wrong with that in theory if it's someone who's doing that based on statistical science. But if they have an agenda to please the president and they already know that they're going to be fired unless the numbers are good, that presents a huge problem for the United States. So I think we need to really focus on that and look at what's coming next, because that's a concern. One thing I would point out about that is that there are things that you could do with the data already. For example, Uber and Lyft drivers. Right now, they're not considered potentially in the full-time payroll category because some of them are part-time, et cetera. You could have a new commissioner who says that you need to count those, and all of a sudden the numbers for jobs added that month could go way up. So that's the first thing. The second thing is questioning the methodology would allow for an opening to totally revise the methodology to goose the numbers. So you're already seeing that. Yesterday, first of all, you're already seeing that, and you're seeing that in a way that is concerning because it does not seem to be based on anything legitimate. So yesterday, Kevin Hassett, the director of the National Economic Council, went on CNBC to talk about stage 1, essentially, of what I'm saying about the playbook, to talk about the BLS. Here's the clip.
I mean, I remember talking with you years ago about the BLS putting numbers out that could help, Democrats put questions ahead of Republicans. So how hard is it or easy is it to manipulate this data?
Well, the problem is that if you want to have like statistical certainty, right, then you need to have a large number of observations that are suspicious. And so there are certainly anecdotes that are very concerning. One of the famous ones in the literature is that right before Mitt Romney and Barack Obama were running for office for president, there was a GDP release that was really surprisingly positive right before the election. I thought I had previously briefed Mitt Romney's campaign that I thought that they're probably going to have a number that looked like a recession. And then, in fact, they got a really big, beautiful number right before the election. It probably had a big effect on the election. And then that number ultimately was revised away. And it was revised away because it turned out that the number happened because of the biggest ever, all the way back to World War II, increase in defense spending. No kidding.
I mean, that is exactly what we've spoken about. That's right.
Yes,
and that's
when
what
you
I'm
see
referring
something
to.
like that, then you got to say, no, this is not the kind of thing that should happen. Our data agencies need to make sure that the data are trustworthy and not being manipulated politically. And I'm 100% sure that President Trump has made that one of his highest priorities, that we put together a team that produces data that people can 100% trust and that people know where the data came from and can open source it as much as possible.
Unbelievable.
So there's actually one main problem with what he said. The host asked him about BLS numbers being rigged in 2012 under Obama. And he cited a GDP number as something suspicious. GDP is not measured by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics does not measure GDP. That is the Department of Commerce. I can't imagine that someone like Kevin Hassett, who actually used to be in the Council of Economic Advisors, which is the economic advisory office in the White House, doesn't know that. I think he's blatantly lying to try to create more of an opening for Trump. That should concern all of us. So that's already happening, right? The lies are already happening. The propaganda is already out there. Next, you're going to see him announce a nominee. That's coming soon. The nominee will likely be somebody who says that these numbers are outdated, that they need updating, and because of the Republican-controlled Senate, that person will likely be confirmed. The reason why I say step 3, funnel cash to outside help, is because what's another line that they will probably use is, in order to update this data, we need new vendors to help us. We need the private sector. Now, here's another thing to point out. The private sector has numbers that they publish. ADP and other organizations publish what they believe are jobs added to the economy every month. And oftentimes they don't sync with what the government puts out. That tension is real. And oftentimes the government number is used as the default to compare against the private sector. But what Trump may do is say, we need to partner with outside vendors. And we will give millions of dollars to someone to help us. You bet that the people who will get those contracts will be people who Trump would want to enrich. Fourth, after that is in place, you'll see numbers go up. And even though it's apples to oranges, I do not believe that Trump will recognize that distinction. That's another concern that we all should have. So that's what's coming up next. Again, we are at stage 1. We see the questioning of the data already happening. But stay tuned for much more to come on this because it is going to be critical for our economy. The last point is that trillions of dollars are decided based on these numbers every month. I remember at 8 a.m. when we were being briefed and the numbers were below expectations, I knew that when the number were to come out, it was going to affect the markets negative if it was below expectations, and it almost always did. Trillions of dollars are based on this. This is not something to put in the hands of politicians. Donald Trump has done that, and it is going to have serious repercussions for not only our country, but the global economy at large. What does that mean in essence? It means that there will be less trust in our economy. It means that the cost for us to buy goods as a country will go up because of that. And it means higher prices for you as individuals. The last thing I would say is that there is precedent for this. Argentina and Turkey both manipulated their numbers. The global economy didn't trust them as much. We saw massive global calamity as a result. We can't let that happen in the United States.
These days, sadly, it's less a question of if your personal information will be leaked. It's more a question of when will it happen. And this is why I use Aura. Our sponsor, Aura, monitors the dark web, your financial accounts, your credit, and will let you know with real-time alerts if any of your personal information has been exposed or if someone tries to use it to steal your identity. Could be your social, Could be bank logins, your credit file. Aura keeps an eye on all of it 24/7, so you're not blindsided by fraud. It's like having a digital bodyguard with Aura that never sleeps, scanning for threats, able to warn you before real damage is done. Aura also includes award-winning antivirus software to protect your devices from malware, phishing, and ransomware. And Aura also gives you a secure password manager, US-based support that's always available, and up to $5 million in identity theft insurance if the worst were to happen. One app does the work of several. And for me, it's worth it for the peace of mind, for my family, and for myself. You can try Aura for free for 14 days at aura.com/Pacman. The link is in the description.